So Friday lunchtime, it's time for another Instagram Live. We've got an absolute cracker of a character for you today. It's going to be a really, really fun next hour or so. He's a player who's had a great career, is currently commentating, and just one of the best characters you're ever going to find in the game. And much to our amazement, he has logged on already. So just be joining us in the bottom half of the screen very shortly. Hope everyone's staying well. Weather's glorious, yet more frustration for those of us who wish to be out on the golf course. But hopefully it means that the golf courses are going to be in great condition by the time we get back to them. So, Mr. Johnston, how are you, sir? As if by magic appear on the screen. Now, was it the picture of yourself or of me that took you by surprise then?
It was that I got it to work at all. I mean, talk about techno idiots.
Oh, and you were fastest finger first joining up there. I was very impressed.
First time on Instagram, I have no idea what I'm doing. A bit like when I was on a golf course, to be honest.
Well, the good news is you don't really have to know anything about what you're doing at all. It's just chatting and going over sort of career and stories. And I thought actually what I'd start by doing is giving you a little bit of a this is your life moment, and that will just so people know your kind of background as a player. Obviously, people will know you as a commentator now. But as a player, a bit of a history is turned pro in 1979. Had 6 wins on European Tour between 1984 and 2001, including the 1992 Volvo PGA Championship at Wentworth. Were the 1995 Dunhill Cup winner representing Zimbabwe with Nick Price and Mark McNulty. 17 wins on the Sunshine Tour, including topping the Order of Merit in the 88-89 season and 93-94. 2 European Seniors Tour wins in Jersey and at Woburn. Topped the European Tour short game stats in 98, 99 and 2000. Top of the sand saves in 99, 2000 and 2001. Now you might have been top before that, but the stats only go back to 99. And vice captain of the President's Cup international team with Nick Price to 2013, 15 and 17. Not bad.
Thank God you got that out the way.
So yeah, quite a career, and I think one of the things in particular that sort of strikes me is that particularly for yourself and other sort of African players was the mixture of the tours that you played. I mean, you actually came out of quite what would probably be regarded as a bit of a golden era for Zimbabwean golfers in particular, where you've got yourself, Nick Price, Mark McNulty, South African players, David Frost, John Bland, who all came out of the same kind of era. Did many of you grow up playing together? And did that help sort of drive you on and help as a group succeed?
I think in Harare they had Nick Price, Mark McNulty, Dennis Watson, who finished second on the PGA Tour money list in '84, won 3 times that year. They were all Harare, and I was from Bulawayo. They're about 300 miles apart. So we were from sort of different parts of the world. I mean, it's a long way apart, especially in those days. But we had wonderful junior programs, wonderful support from the parents. We used to have inter-club leagues, inter-provincial leagues. And, we all mixed and got to know each other very well like that.
And did you, I guess, Price is your same age as yourself.
Don't tell him that, he's a year younger.
Is he younger?
He loves being a year younger.
And Mark McNulty's a few years older on, but did you, I assume you played a lot of representative golf against one another?
Yes, a lot of provincial stuff. Nick and I played on a couple of Rhodesian teams, as it was in those days, before it became Zimbabwe in 1980. Nick and I went, we used to go, we went to the Eisenhower Trophy at Penina together. We used to play against South Africa in the Rhodesian team together. Nick actually it was my first trip away from home ever as a 12-year-old. They had a leg of tournaments up in Harare, and we used to have to go up there, and we would get billeted out with other families. And I'd been billeted out with Nick and his mom. His dad passed away when he was very young. And he tells the story that he was 11, I was 12, and he was terrified. He thought, geez, I'm going to have this 12-year-old come in here and bully me for 2 weeks. And they came to the station to pick me up. In those days, your folks put you on the train, golf clubs, and off you went. And I got off the train with my golf clubs, and he came up, and he was about a foot taller than me. And the opening salvo was, "Are you really 12? Yes, what's it to you?" Our opening remarks to each other, and we've been lifelong friends ever since. It's been a tremendous friendship, something I've really cherished.
And I mean, I guess with all of you growing up in Southern Africa, who were your collective kind of inspirations growing up? I'm assuming Gary Player, Bobby Locke, those kind of players, but I get that they were sort of the key ones at the time. But was it because of Gary that there was such then a great kind of era for sort of up until now? It's still very successful Southern African golf.
Yeah, absolutely, no question whatsoever. Gary was the current hero. Bobby Locke was a bit before my time, sort of, when I was being born, basically, in the 50s. But Gary was the hero, and he used to come up and play in the Rhodesian Open, and he used to come up every now and then and just do clinics, even at our local golf club in Bulawayo. And, just watching this little magician, it was wonderful. It was a huge inspiration. All we thought about was being like Gary. And, he was the best bunker player in the world. So whatever Gary did, we tried to emulate. If he scratched his hand with his backside with his left hand, that's what we were going to do because Gary did it. And I think that's why Southern Africa has produced so many fantastic bunker players, all due to Gary's skill and genius around the greens. Because
that was actually to preempt one of the questions, that obviously with Gary's absolute ability out of the bunkers, was that what made, you're known for your short game, bunker play in particular as well, was it, obviously you just answered, was because of that? And was there anything that he would do that was particularly, in those days in particular, from a technique point of view, was there anything specifically that he would do that was noticeably different to other players?
No, not really. I think every great bunker player that's ever lived, since Gene Sarazen discovered, a wider sole and bounce on sand wedges, that was his invention, really. Every fantastic bunker player has done basically the same thing over the years. These days they're trying to teach new methods, standing squarer, taking the club inside the line, blah. What a total load of bollocks. I'm allowed to say that live on Instagram. Oh. Absolute rubbish. Part of the reason for
even
that,
if you aren't, you've done it anyway. So.
It's out there. I'll try and really bend out too late. Part of the reason that they're trying to develop a new bunker method is because they now teach guys to play their sand play with 60-degree wedges. And, if you stand open up a 60-degree wedge, take it out to end, which is, there's no question it's the better way of playing it. The ball just goes nowhere. You've got very little variation in shots. If you do that with a 60-degree wedge, you can do it with a 56. Seve always said there shouldn't be more than 56 degrees on a sand wedge, and I agree. If you've got a less lofted club and you play the bunker shots the way every great player ever has, you can do so much more with it. You can get it to run out, you can get it to bite, first bounce, second bounce, third bounce. You can get it to spin right to left if you practice hard enough. Yeah, I think, that's the main difference why there's such a change in bunker method teaching. But I still think the old way is, the variety and the variation is tenfold.
Is that just purely the relationship between the loft and then how the sole interacts through the sand? And by opening the 56, you're not taking and not adding so much loft that it just goes straight underneath the ball. You can still use the face.
Exactly right. And I've always said more important than sandwich sole is the width of the sole. I'm sure I've got a sandwich around here. I've actually got this. Oh, hang on. I'm going to probably lose the camera because I've got everything balancing on here. on a golf bag, can you believe it? Let me just take an 8-iron out of here. If you look at an 8-iron, this is going to be different, isn't it? If you look at an 8-iron, and I've got that dead square, the bounce is the difference in level between the back edge and the leading edge. As you know, this is for higher handicappers. It slopes down slightly towards the back. But if you open it up with a sand wedge, the more important thing is the width of the sole. If I had a wide sole on a sand wedge here now, the back edge would be down here. That's the bounce. You know, it's way more important than the amount of bounce if you play bunker shots with the older and I believe correct method. You know, there's so much made about bounce. I used for chipping. I used a Wilson Niblick made in the 1930s, I think it was. I used it for about 8 or 9 years on tour, and it didn't have zero bounce. It had negative bounce.
Yeah.
The leading edge, I mean, I could shave with the thing. It was. I don't know if I brought it in one day and showed it to you.
I think we've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're still talking to me because I might be considered a bit dippy, you know. But it actually, from the leading edge, it went straight up, and it was the most wonderful club for chipping because you could just get into the ball. You never drop kicked it. You didn't duff it. It was wonderful. And you know there are certain conditions in life where you do need bounce, but in the sand, width of sole is more important than bounce if you play it the old way, the correct way.
Yeah. So the question that came through from Tom, who's one of the fitters here, is what was your wedge setup when you were playing? Was there a specific that you'd, and would you? I guess it kind of leads in. There are kind of two parts to it. There's one, I guess, growing up in South Africa and Europe into the variety of conditions that you'd see. Would you change your wedge setup or the way you delivered the club to the sand? And did you have a kind of a set of wedges that you would kind of go to?
No, I mean, we're talking bunker shots, purely bunker shots.
Mainly bunker
shots. Yes, no, I had a set method. I mean, I've always firmly believed that a narrow stance in bunker play, greenside bunker play, is a great idea because you're trying to release the club head past your hands and down into the sand, and it's much easier to do with a very narrow stance. When I see guys with these massive wide stances in bunkers, I always think, and the wider you get, the more you're likely to get the club going behind you and inside the line, which is a no-no in bunker play. And I mean, you know, we've spent a lot of time over the years, I have with you guys, because I better get this in here now. Other than when I was off tour, you guys at Precision Golf are the only guys that I trusted with my clubs. And I know I drove you mad. We tried welding.
I was going to say we welded someone to the bottom of the way. It's a good job. We had some welders down the bottom of the road in Thorpe when we were down there.
Yes. You know, I used the Ping K2 sand iron, which was made from sort of, I think, 79 to 82, 83. I used that my whole career. Eventually, they ran out of heads at the Ping factory in America. They started sending them to me. But, you know, when you're on tour and you're using other manufacturers' clubs, they wanted to use their clubs, you know, all their clubs. And as you know, we had these McGregors and Clevelands, you know, when I changed contracts a few times, tailor-made. And it was almost impossible to duplicate that sandwich. We tried hard. But, you know, Carsten Solheim, the founder of Ping, was so far ahead of his game. I still think that's the best sand club that was ever made. They've now duplicated the I2, haven't they?
Yeah.
The I2. I've got one of those, and they've done a great job of it too. They really have. So.
Yeah, because with Ping, with some of the wedges, they've got quite a kind of a steeply kind of cambered sole that has a real big V on it, whereas the K2 wedge had a sort of a longer, flatter section to the back. So, say with the width side of it, you're then using the bounce to its fullest extent where it's on the back edge. So you tend to play your bunker shots a little bit steeper down into the sand?
Yes, absolutely. You know, to go back to the other question, I would stand with my feet very close. I would set up open and I would swing the club along my toe line. The big mistake is people set up open and then instead of swinging along the toe line, and that's basically, you know, you open the face up, it compensates for the fact that you're swinging right to left. So I would do that, and opening the face up compensates for the fact that you're aiming left. I was pretty steep. You know, I've always said if you gave, you know, I always picked a point in the sand, a grain of sand behind the ball. That was my focus point, and then I forgot about the ball. And, you know, it was probably, I mean, people would say it's very close, maybe a quarter to half an inch behind the ball. And, you know, you've got to be quite advanced in bunker play and have practiced a lot to be able to do that regularly. But, you know, if you're trying to hit a particular spot in the sand, and I've always said this, if you gave a club to a 4-year-old and said, there's a mark on the ground, here's a golf club, hit that same spot every time, he wouldn't be doing this. He'd pick it straight up over his head and chop it like an axe. You know, so the steeper you get, the more precise you can get into the sand. And, you know, these are a lot. I must mention Gary Player here again. I found it in an old book fair years ago. We used to get comic strips in the newspaper. That was the only golf coaching we have. There were international sanctions in Rhodesia. We couldn't get golf magazines, and there was this strip in the paper every Friday, this little comic strip, which he eventually put into book form. And there were two of these cartoon books, and I found them at a book fair. So I showed them to my son Dale. He obviously, what does Dad know? I didn't listen to my father. Why would he listen to me? But every now and then I go and have a look at it, and there were so many wonderful tips in there. And everything that I learned from the game was basically from those. And these are all things that I learned from Gary: picking a spot in the sand, concentrating on that, the out to end, the releasing it, and then there are variations. Types of sand, length of shot, depth of bunker. But you can get, once you get the basic fundamentals of sand play, it's a piece of cake. It's the only shot in golf where you don't actually have to make contact with the ball, which is quite promising.
So when you were coming across to say the Open, or going to different conditions around Europe, around Africa, would it be would the tools you'd use stay the same, and just the way the kind of angle of entry change as the types of sand, depth of sand change, or would you do anything more specific when you're? Obviously, you would do something a bit more specific, but as a kind of a broad generalisation, what would be your approach to the changes in conditions?
You know what? I wouldn't make major changes. I would change for wet sand. If in wet sand and compacted sand, more of the blow from the sand is transmitted through the ball. So I'd probably hit slightly further away. I'd hit with a squarer face. If I was going to get as close to the ball as I would normally, I would play it with a squarer face, because you don't want bounce. If you open the club face up, it's going to bounce on the back edge, and the ball's going to need a dentist. So I'd play it slightly squarer. And the only time I would change equipment would be in fine sand in links bunkers. Okay. That sand is so fine that it actually, it's denser, it compacts closer. And if you play it with a very wide open club, with a wide sole, it does tend to bounce, and you can lose a lot of control. So I might go for something with a slightly narrower sole, or play it with a face a little squarer to reduce the amount of bounce.
Great stuff. Look at that. Easy, isn't it?
Piece of cake.
So, you've gone through some of the technique side of it. Is there, when through the time that you were playing, there are quite a lot of equipment changes. So the grooves changing from the kind of the UV grooves to the box grooves, and then the ball from
1.62 to 1.68. I go back a long way.
So did that change in ball? Obviously, then later on got the Ballatas into the Pro Vs, but the change in ball size, because we know through the air, those sort of shots, there was a noticeable difference. So they'd always use the small ball at the Open Championship. But from a short game point of view, what was there? Was there anything specific at that end of the game that the difference in ball size did?
No, it was mainly distance. The balls in those days were all they all had very soft covers, so you could really work them. If you changed to a Top Flight or a Molitor, you could still do the same things with the ball. The big ball, the 1.68, the American ball, which we all went to eventually, was probably a little easier to work, but it was quite disconcerting at first, because it was only 0.06 of an inch difference. But when you look down at it when you're putting, it looked like you were trying to get a beach ball into the top of a Coke bottle. It was just horrendous. This isn't going to fit as nicely. And then, as you say, we went on to Ballatas, and then on to the professional, the pro staff, which all had very soft covers. And then when we went on to Pro Vs, that was the biggest difference in my lifetime in golf ball technology. That we've done it at your place, at Precision occasionally. If you get one of the old Pinnacles, remember, if you used a Pinnacle on tour, people would have laughed you off the course. Well, when we did used to use them, when we didn't have the one ball rule, we were restricted to one ball. You'd have your professionals in the bag, but you would always have that one Pinnacle hidden in the bottom pocket. And if you got into a gale and you were over water, Pinnacle time. And it used to go like a missile into the wind. But if you bounce the old Pinnacle on a club face, and you bounce the modern balls, they sound exactly the same. That's how hard the modern balls are. The cores are different now, obviously. But if you bounce a Ballata on a club face and a modern ball, man, it's such a difference. It's so much less clunky. Big difference.
And so the kind of shots that you could play with the Ballatas versus the modern day balls, particularly with sort of the delicate shots around the greens, how much how long did it take to adjust to that?
Quite a while actually, because by the time they came into play, I was 40. I was heading towards the back end of my career. And the Ballata was so much fun to use because you could seriously work it. You could fizz it, you could spin it, you could shut the face, get it to run out. The new balls spin way less. So, in the old days, one of the fun parts of being inside the ropes was when you'd hit a little 30-yard chip or pitch. It would come in low and steaming, and everybody thought you'd made a complete cock up with it. And the thing would take one bounce, go zing, bounce up to the hole, and just go, and everyone the other round, it was the spectators' favourites. And many times people would come and say, "How did you do that? How did you do that?" Good luck trying that with a modern ball. Now you generally play it to land and run out a heck of a lot more.
Yeah, because there was a shot I remember watching on some of where they had the reruns. There was 96 Masters. It was one that Norman played on the 13th, where they got the pin on the back layer, and he played this thing off outside his back foot, and it went off at knee height. 1, 2, 3, got to the top level and just stuck. And you look and go, well, that's just impossible with the current stuff.
Can't do it. A lot of guys changed to the Pro V1X in the early 2000s because it went further. Basically, for anybody with a club head speed of 150 and up, you gain so much distance when you got to that point. And I tried it for about a week, and I just found it was I think I lost distance because I was a bit of a powder puffer with a driver, but I lost my advantage around the greens because it was so hard I couldn't work it. And I would suggest to every amateur out there, unless they're a gorilla, don't go for the harder ball, go for a softer ball. You'll gain so much more around the greens, the short game, than you're going to gain with, proving what a man you are off the tee.
Because I guess that's the one thing they're trying now with the balls to get a little bit back to. So with one of the, I think it's Bridgestone with their cover, that we're all shut down before they managed to get the balls out for us to test. But that's one where they're saying they've got another 1,000 revolutions on short game spin. So there was actually very pretty. There was a note through from one of our viewers saying that the sound's good. If people can just give us a little sort of virtual wave, or just a comment just to make sure that you can hear us, that would be great. Otherwise, it'll be a sort of a silent film of us chatting.
So this is the point where we start miming.
Just
to wind everyone up.
Thanks for the notes, guys. That's great. Thanks for letting us know you can still hear us. So they're trying to get. I think they're trying to get a bit more of the short game side in particular back that you used to be able to get the control around the greens, but trying to then retain the long game performance. So I say fascinating that's. I guess you say the amount of shots that you just can't play now that you used to be able to do. It's the ball in particular. I guess the only danger potentially would be with the current grooves, whether that would end up you only have one shot with each ball.
Yeah, and I just wish that when they did the groove change, that they'd done a wholehearted job. I mean, it was I wish they'd gone back to the specs that they had on grooves in the early 80s before square grooves came out. The groove, the land between the grooves had to be no more than 3 times wider than the width of the groove itself, and there was a limitation on the angles of the grooves, the side angles of the grooves, and when square grooves came along, it just about took flyers out of place, out of play. And then they made a change in the grooves, but I still see guys hitting out of rough this long around the greens, and having the ball coming in with a bit of spin. And
they're basically back to where they were now. Yeah, because
absolutely.
They haven't limited the face tread as much, and so there are lots of little grooves on the face now where there used to be just the bigger
100%,
grooves.
100%. Yeah, I wish they would go back, and I think Sevy would cry when he would, if he saw the grooves of today, because he was such a genius. He was so far ahead of everybody else, and you could give him, a flat-faced shovel with no grooves, and he'd produce something miraculous. And that was fair because he had developed these skills, he had the ability, and he had practiced it. And before they had the big change in grooves, used to drive me nuts. I'd see guys out of the rough, 10 yards off the green, massive big swing, ball would come and land it right at the hole, and it would just go plop and stop stone dead. And I thought, it's just skill reduction, not right.
So you mentioned Seve there. Actually, one of the next bits was did you exchange a lot of ideas with other tour players around kind of shot types? And because I think with golf as a professional sport, it's one where the players tend to be really quite engaged with one another about kind of showing each other how they did things. And so was that something that you and your peers used to do a lot of, sort of showing one another how you hit shots?
Absolutely, and probably a lot more than today. These days, the guys have their entourage. There's so much money at stake, and they're earning so much that they have their swing coach, their short game coach, their putting coach. And it's frightening. We basically had our support system was once the kids started school and you didn't have the wife with you and the kids, your support system was your caddy and your buddies on tour. That was it. You couldn't just get your coach on the range the next morning. Hey, just show me how to do this. You would be around the chipping green, and you'd all be having chipping contests and teaching each other. And if you saw somebody do something on the course, after the round, you wouldn't hesitate. You'd just go and say, listen, please, I need half an hour on the chipping green. I have to see how you did that. And Seve loved that. He loved showing you these shots, and he was a genius. But he found it quite, English wasn't his first language, but I think he found it quite hard to describe how to play the shots, because I'm not always sure he actually knew how to do it. He invented shots during the rounds that he had never practiced in his whole life.
Okay.
And he just had a feel and just a vision, and he'd look at a shot, from every angle and then produce something. Even guys playing with him with fantastic short games, you just look at each other and go, gee, how? We're never going to be able to do that, ever.
Was he the most experimental with those sort of shot types and techniques and clubs, or it's not necessarily clubs in terms of the style of clubs, but more kind of what clubs he'd use for what shots?
I think it all came from the fact that he had learned to play with one golf club on the beaches in Spain. That's how he learned to play the game, and he learned to play every shot. He could cut it out of a bunker over a higher lip with a 3-iron. What? And he could just, you'd see them Spanish guys messing around on chipping greens. They'd be behind a bunker with a flag tight here with a 6-iron. And you think, what is this guy? Everybody else half shanks them, killing people on the far side of the chipping green. Seve would be there with a 6-iron, and the thing would pop straight up in their land and run this far. My God, he was the most naturally gifted golfing genius that ever lived, and he did stuff with the club that I've never seen before and I've never seen since. But he couldn't really explain it. He had something intangible that you can't describe.
I was going to say, there must have been shots where I remember describing one kind of bunker shot, I think, that he hit. He was sort of showing you, kind of, come and watch this. But they're shots you must even to this day, just not have a clue how he did it.
The bunker shots, we had a couple of contests in bunkers, and it was great fun. I mean, it was we always sort of got to the point where we had a half and then went home. And we pretty much did stuff the same way, but chipping and pitching. I was not even in the same league as Seve. Couldn't even polish his shoes. That's how good he was. It was frightening. And every time he played with them, he'd produce 2 or 3 shots somewhere during the round that you'd look at your caddy and just think, I have no idea. No idea how he could do that. No, it was spectacular.
It's obviously he's someone that all of the players that we've spoken to. So Colin, when we spoke to him the other day, everyone just speaks about Seve with such reverence. I know he was such a influential person, but as a character. So what's your fondest memory of Seve? Or funniest, whichever way you want.
Fondest memory is of every time he walked into a player's lounge. As he walked in, it was quite bizarre. Just for a few seconds, the sudden hush would come over the whole players' lounge, and everybody would look up. And because we admired him so much, he was our Seve, And he'd walk in, with that swagger and that smile of his, and, everything would stop there, Sevy. And then you'd try to get talking to the spouses again, and they wouldn't want to talk to you because they just wanted to sit and drool. Sevy. I mean, every one of our wives just loved Sevy. And he had such a nice manner. He would come around, and he would kiss the wives, and then, they'd all sit there gooey-eyed. And from that perspective, we all hated him. No, not really. No, I suppose my best moment with Sevy was, you know the story well. We were playing at Canada in Holland. And the sixth hole is a very sharp dogleg left to right par 4 with a lone tree on the corner. And we both had our tee shots down there. And I was a charger. I was off. Sevy was a casual walker. And I was gone. And I get down there, and we're playing over a slight blind rise, and you couldn't actually see where the balls had finished. So I get down there, and one ball is about 50 yards past the fairway, in the middle of the fairway, and the other one is absolutely stone dead like that, up against this lone tree. I mean, it is dead. So I wait, and Sevy comes wandering down, and there's a sprinkler about 5 or 6 feet away. So I put the club behind the ball, and I stretch my right leg out as far as I can, and I put it on the sprinkler. I said, "See, is this a drop here? Foot on the sprinkler?" He said, No. I said, "No. Natural stance only. I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, how about this?" And I stuck my left leg out and put that on the sprinkler. I said, "Sevy, what about this? I get a drop for this." He says, No. He says, "Natural stance only. I tell you, I know the rule." I said, "That's lucky, because I also know the rule, and that's your ball, and that's mine in the fairway." And I mean, he took it. He said, "You think you're clever? Okay, I just chip it out." So he chips it out sideways. He then knocks it into about 20 feet, and I wedge it into 30 feet. I 3-putt, he holds. I make 5, he makes 4. I mean, you never got one up on Sevy for long. And as we walked off the tee, I won't use the exact language, but basically, as he walked past, we just whispered, "See what happens when you mess with Sevy," and just kept going. But we had a lot of laughs. He had a great sense of humor. The Americans didn't really get Sevy's sense of humor, and I think it worked both ways. I don't really think Sevy got the Americans either. I don't think there was just they didn't gel somehow. We loved him to pieces, still do.
He's still, everyone talks about him only with positives, and I think for European golf in particular, he was the one that got it on the global stage, that got people wanting to play golf. Really, everyone wanted to be like Sevy, even if you couldn't.
Absolutely.
It was he was just magic to watch, and really kind of made the tour to a point. He was our Palmer, really.
Absolutely, here, no question whatsoever. Yeah.
So, seeing as we're on tour stories, what give us a couple of your best. One name that's been mentioned by Mark, who fits here, is Simon Hobday. That's if any of these are able to be told.
Listen, I think you said that this only goes 40 minutes or something, does it?
We got an hour. We can always relog back in if
we got an hour.
Allowed.
Perfect, because I was going to say, if we start Hobday stories, we might need a day. Hobday, Simon was the funniest human being I ever came across in my whole life. He was just hilarious. And he had this running battle with God, Simon. He was one of probably the 4 or 5 best strikers that ever lived on this planet. But he considered himself the unluckiest player on the planet, and he might have been, actually. But he had this running battle with God, and he'd have incidents, something would happen on the course, and he'd stand and, "Come down here and fight like a man." It was just too much. And he had this array of hats in his golf bag. And, if he had a bad break, he'd change his headgear. If you said, "Simon," you go, "Hobbs, don't call me Simon or Hobbs. I've got him fooled. So you had to call him something else, Joe or John or something. Until his next bad break, in which case, "Right, so you found me, did you?" And then he'd change hats again. But he was just the funniest man. And he used to swear like a trooper on the golf course. I mean, a lot of us did, but the way he did it, he used to get away with it. I remember playing with him at Rand Park in Joburg one year. and he pushed his tee shot slightly, and it pitched on the edge of the left edge of the right-hand bunker and shot forward straight into the back lip of the bunker. So we get up there, and he hasn't seen us. He thinks it's just in the bunker. Now, gets there, no ball. And there it is, like a little searchlight buried under the back lip of the bunker. And he looks around, and we're all thinking, oh my God, it's going to kick off now. So, puts his club down, walks through the bunker, goes to the gallery ropes, gets 3 old ladies. Ladies, please come with me. All 3 of them, takes them into the bunker, looks at it, and again, I won't use the language, looks in the bunker and looks at them, he says, now girls, that is an effing hob day lie. And these ladies just cracked up laughing. They thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. About 4 holes later, I let out an expletive, a much milder expletive, and I got fined for swearing. It was unbelievable. He could say anything in our company, and Hobbs was just the funniest man. He really was. I mean, there's so many stories. Honestly, you wouldn't know where to begin. Yeah. Dale Hayes, Hobbs, and Dennis Hutchinson did a book called Hole in One, which I think is available on Amazon. Worth a read. A lot of the stories were dumbed down because a lot of the people in that book are still alive. But man, we miss Hobbs. He was one of the greatest characters that ever lived. He got interviewed when he won the US Seniors Open. And he had about a 2-foot putt, and it was the most horrendous twitch you've ever seen because he was a terrible putter. And they interviewed him afterwards. And I mean, he just had the best one-liners, and they were different. They just came into his mind. And the interviewer said to him, Simon, how did you feel on that last putt? He says, thank goodness I was too nervous to choke. And, he just, every day of his life, he came up with 100 original one-liners. He was magnificent, Simon. Magnificent.
It's true that there was a sort of period where there were just some great characters. I mean, there were some amusing things. So obviously, they've got to be more careful with what they say because they get fined left, right, and centre with microphones and things. But I always think that humour for the pros is actually quite good. So I know Tyrrell Hatton does a lot of not so great things, but where it was at Hillside last year, where he hit an 8 iron. He said, that's a lovely ball flight. And he said, shame it's 20 yards left of target. And I just think that for a viewing public point of view, I think that seeing a bit more of the pros' characters, I think, is something that I think helps people kind of understand where they are rather than just these sort of machines out on tour. They're genuine people with amusing feelings. And it's good entertainment.
Absolutely. Well, that's one of the things I miss most about the tour. Doing commentary, I'm lucky. I still get on the range and have a bit of banter with the youngsters, although they all see me as their grandfather now, which is quite sad. But being on the range, the banter and the humour on the range on the tour was just magnificent. A very quick story. I remember taking my son Dale, who you look after as well, by the way, to the BMW International in Germany the one year. I think he was about 12. I said, come here with me for the week, school holidays. And we get there on the practice day, we're walking down the back of the range. And, I mean, we all abuse each other terribly, obviously. It's men, And I'm walking down the back of the range, and I've got my 12-year-old son, so I'm on my best behaviour. And every single person we walk past just turns around and just absolutely abuses me, and I would normally return it. But, I mean, it was, and I'm going, hello. We get back to the room that evening, and I come out the shower, and my boy's sitting on the edge of the bed like this. I said, are you all right? He says, Dad, why do you still do this? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, everyone out there hates you. I said, what do you mean? He said, no, when we walked down the range, everybody swore at you. I've never heard such language. I said, no, you don't get this. That's because they're my friend. First life lesson for a 12-year-old. Yeah, but I do miss that a lot. I do miss that. But we get a lot of that with the commentary and the commentary teams as well. A lot of guys that we've played with, so we have a lot of fun.
I think interesting that you mentioned Dale, because there is actually a question from a certain Dale Johnston. And he said to ask you about Brandon Stone.
Sometimes I wonder why I didn't stay a bachelor, Oh, God, it's so embarrassing. The single most embarrassing moment of my career. I must have... Do you know this one?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. He did say it was embarrassing.
It's a shocker. It's just a nightmare. I'm playing with Kevin Stone, his dad, in the Zimbabwe Open, way back. And Kevin's mom is walking around spectating, 7 months pregnant. Brandon's mom, sorry. she's 7 months pregnant with Brandon. So, tummy out here. And I have a little 3-putt with my old bullseye that I was used. Walk off the green and wing the club at the bag. Hands in the air, yes, I had a vile temper. I came off the course every day exhausted from fighting my temper and embarrassed about it. But there you go, that's another story. So I wing the putter at the bag. Whoop, 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 helicopter hits the bag. Nice soft shaft on the bullseye putter. Off sideways. And absolutely nails Brandon's mum. Right on the helmet. And down she goes, lights out. I mean, can you think of anything more horrifying? Kevin's now still got a putt. And here it is. Wow. We got the water. It was just horrific. And I think the only reason Kevin didn't beat me to death is that he was as stunned as I was. To this day, 29 years on or 27 years on, every time I see her, I still apologize. I mean, it was the single worst moment. Yeah, I thought I'd killed 2 people in one throw. No, that shouldn't happen to a man. I suppose it does if you act like an idiot, though.
See, I actually didn't know that story, and I didn't realise it was quite that embarrassing either. So I think that's Dale owes you one for that, I think.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think when his birthday is now, so I can avoid giving him a present. But he's always got the better of me anyway, that boy.
So I guess going on, you mentioned it with your the commentary side of things, as your sort of career's progressed, gone from main tour to seniors tour, and now commentating. And we had the pleasure of when we did our trip in December last year to Paradis behind us. We came and saw you in the commentary booth out in Mauritius, and it struck me that actually being in there, and you kind of gave us the headphones to have a listen to things. The amount going on. In the commentary booth, in your ears and things, it's so much more involved than just sitting with a cup of coffee in a microwave and making and a microphone.
I always said you made rubbish coffee.
I don't make it. It's a machine. It's nothing to do with me.
It was only when you microwaved it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in there, but it's not that bad for ex-tour pros. Because, when you've done 25 or 35 years on tour like I did, there's a heck of a lot of voices running around in your head at the best of times. Anyway, stop talking to me. But it's not everyone's cup of tea. Some guys never get used to the idea that, you've got producer, you've got people putting scores, sometimes the director, and you can't switch it off because then you don't come up with the breaks. They've got people doing counts for the different broadcasters. You do eventually learn to filter it out. But, if you start listening to the voices, that's when you're lost because you end up just sitting and you lose track of everything. But, you've got to be a natural born bull duster as well to be a commentator. Let's be honest. I think you got to enjoy talking, which I do. I'm shut up. You got to know your subject, and I believe you've got to have a bit of humour and a bit of fun. If I was told tomorrow, no more humour, no more fun, I'm out of there. It's got to, and thankfully all our producers and the bosses appreciate that. It must be entertainment. It must be entertaining. Otherwise people might as well switch off the sound and just watch the pictures.
Was it something that you'd thought about as you were coming to the back end of your playing career? Was that something you'd thought about as something you might want to do, or was it something you were approached to do?
In the very late 90s, Sky approached me, and they used to have a Wednesday magazine program in the late 90s. I mean, you were only born in about 2004, weren't you? So,
I wish.
And they asked me to go in and just do a few things, talk about bunker plan. It was a magazine program. They showed all the different tours and just have a chat. And after that, they asked me to do a bit of on-course commentary, which is generally where the guys go to begin with. They just want to make sure that you're not going to freeze when there's a mic in front of you. And then, it was never really a great plan of mine, but once I'd done a bit of commentary, I thought, I'm really enjoying this. And, it's a great opportunity when your playing days are over to keep involved with the game. I don't play an awful lot at all now. I always swore when the frustration outweighed the pleasure in golf and I wasn't competitive, I was done. So, but it's a wonderful way to be involved with the game still and be involved with the youngsters, and occasionally I get to come and have coffee with youngsters like you as well.
Just make sure I don't make it. Is that so? And I think it must be great to actually have some of your contemporaries and things doing it as well. I think to still have the camaraderie and that side, and being when you go out to the venues, you're still interacting with the players as well. It must be quite nice to be able to keep that going.
Oh, it's fantastic. You know, you've got a couple of the sort of lead commentators, guys like Doogie Donnelly, Dom Holier. You know, they're professional broadcasters. They've done it all their lives. You know, not particularly good golfers. So we are the colour commentators or co-commentators, and that's our job. So that is mainly ex-tour pros, and the on-course guys are ex-tour pros generally because they, you know, could be able to call the shots. So yes, we're out there with guys that we play golf with an awful lot. So we have a lot of fun and banter in the evenings. We go out for dinner together. But, you know, both for Sky, I do commentary for Sky and for the international or world feed. And it's all guys I played golf with. So we just have an absolute ball. We love it.
So it's, obviously we saw you when we were out in Mauritius, and you've had a hand in, I mean, this is somewhere, so behind me, I will just give a little bit of a scooch around just to give people a view of, this is a picture on our wall. This is where James and I went back end of last year, December.
You're making me homesick
and assuming all is good to go, we're going back out there in November this year. We took half a dozen clients last year, and you know, assuming travel's going, we'll be there in November. And that's somewhere you've been a long time and had a hand in as well.
And unfortunately we had to cut our Easter holiday short. This Easter was our 27th Easter in a row at the Paradis. And it was a funny story how we ended up going there when the kids were tiny. 93, my daughter Lauren was 3, Dale was 5. And Karen said, you know, we need to take the kids for a beach holiday. And I've never been a great beach person. I prefer the bush veld and mountains. So I gave her this impossible list. I said, okay, but you know what? You know, we're going to be there for a couple of weeks. I need a practice range. I need a golf course. I need a gym. I need a gym like a hole in the head. I need this. I need that. I need water sports. A list of things, most of them I'd never done before. I thought that's the end of that. We won't hear any more about that. And about an hour later, Karen comes and she says, well, I've booked our holiday. What? Put in my list. Okay, bring up the website. Tick, 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 every one of them. So we ended up going there for the first year. And from, you know, our first trip, we just decided there was nothing else we were looking for in a holiday. Anywhere in the world. The people in Mauritius are fantastic. You know, the Paradis, we've made friends there in the staff management, you know, social friends. And, well, hopefully we get to be back there next year when all of this chaos is over with coronavirus. Yeah,
because you've had a hand in the design of the course as well.
Yes, there's been quite a few changes over the years from the original course that we played in the early 90s. You know, they decided to uprate the golf course. So Mario DeVore, the director of golf there, he and I got together. We sort of, you know, made quite a few changes, bunkering greens, shaping of holes, tees, etc. And, yeah, I think we've got it just about where we want it now. And it's the one thing I love about it is that, you know, you tee off, and when you come onto the 18th, you think this can't be over already. It feels like you've been out there for 10 minutes. When you've played it a lot of times, you know exactly what I mean. Yeah, we just love it.
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, like this, the trip we did last year was my first time over there. James has been a few times as well, and I thought
typical James.
Well, it's, I thought that the biggest compliment I can give you on the course was, I thought, was A, it was very fair. There's always, if there's water down one side of the hole, you can bail out the other side. But I think it's just such a beautiful setting. You know, there's variety of holes. When you get around the holes around the bottom of the mountain, the wind, how it goes around, it just plays. You stand there going, well, hang on, it's downwind from a tee shot and it's into wind here. But it's the fact that you can play horrible golf, and when you get out to the holes sort of out on the side, right out in the promontory, it's, you can stand and look at the view and just enjoy the view and go, you know what, life isn't too bad.
And normally,
anytime you can enjoy playing bad golf.
Yeah, and you can wade in and collect your own golf ball normally, can't you?
Yeah.
No, it is just stunning. You know, they've got that wonderful Lone Lamorne mountain, huge mountain, right? I mean, overlooks, as you said, the 6th hole, the par 3. which is the most impossible par 3 in the world to pull a club on. You know, the flag's going one way, clouds are the other.
Yeah.
You throw the grass up, it goes this way, and then it's downwind anyway. So, but yeah, no, we've had so much fun there. It's wonderful. It is the second home to us, the Paradis.
Yeah, it is a fabulous place. So I'm going to go. Actually, there's one other bit that I want to come up before. There are a couple of other questions that have come in, but one's your bush hacking. So
Yes.
that was something that I actually, when I first saw it, it must be, was it first on sort of 5 years ago? Sort of five years
yeah,
back?
probably more back to like.
Actually, when they showed
13,
the cartoon at the beginning, I actually thought it was a joke thing. Initially, I thought it was sort of a Monty Python-esque kind of skit, but actually, I mean, you're a true nature lover.
Yes, yeah, no, I mean, I love the wildlife, and I got into birding about 20 years ago. Passionate about that as well, but yeah, from a very young age, our parents used to take us to game reserves in Rhodesia. It was then Zimbabwe now. And we lived out of town a little bit, and there was a lot of open bushveld just across the road from us. And from the age of, 10, 11, you'd go out there with your air rifle, with a water bottle and your sandwich, and you'd spend all day out there, pretending you were the big game hunter. You wouldn't shoot anything, but and while you were out there, you would gain an interest in insects and flowers and bird life. The only worry ever for the parents was snakes. Otherwise, off you went into the bush for the day, enjoy yourself. It was a completely different world, and it's never left me. I've just it's probably the place I feel the most at ease on the planet. When I'm in the bushveld, that is when I'm at my best. If you ever want to get a loan from me, phone me when I'm in the bushveld. I'll just say whatever.
So how did that bit with Sky come about? Obviously, I think it started. Was it Leopard Creek first, or was it at Nedbank?
It was at Sun City, and Ilana Gordon, one of the South African, she's got her own production company, but she worked for Sky out there. And she came to me during the tournament. She said, "Geez, you know quite a bit about the birds and the wildlife. You're quite interested." I said, "Yeah." She said, "I've got an idea." So in January, when we went back for the SA Open, she said, "Look, I've got this idea about us walking around in the Kruger Park, you hitting balls through the Kruger Park. Sorry, you realise there are wild animals out there." She said, "No, don't worry about that. We'll have a cameraman, I'll produce, we'll have a sound guy, and off we go. And you can script some stuff. We'll go and look for animals and walk through the Kruger Park." And I thought it was a great idea, but I thought you got no chance because you can't even get out of a vehicle. It was the only time it's ever been done out there. So off we went. She got hold of Kruger National Park. They said, okay, we paid a fee. That was fine. We got some nice sponsors. And off we went and spent 8 days just walking around in the Kruger, chilling, and just absolutely wonderful. Bushhacking.com. If you haven't seen it, you'll enjoy it.
There's a wonderful episode of you analysing elephant dung. So there's a choice phrase that they say about talking a certain thing, which I thought was quite amusing. But it's a great series. It's a great fun. We did three series of those, and man, it was fun doing them. It really was. I think we should do another one. So on to a couple of the other questions. We've got a couple that are coming whilst we've been on, and a couple that are residual questions. One, you had this from our coach Stuart Cartwright, who's here. He said you had a very characteristic shuffle at address. And was this something that you had always done, always sort of shuffled around finding a position, or was it something you'd battled with during practice and on course and tried to kind of get out of the habit of?
I've always been quite a twitchy person, a fidgety person. My dad was actually the same. My dad couldn't bear the feel of a shirt. He was always wriggling in his shirt. And I think it started, originally I just played with a hammer or baseball grip. And then when I switched to the overlap or Varden, for some reason I just, at the age of 17, from that moment on, I couldn't get my hands comfortable on a club. And, I would fidget with the hands, then it would go to the shoulders, and then the feet would start going. I looked like a can of worms out there. But I always did that. And on the range, I could actually get a ball, put the club down, open my stance and hit, no problem. First tee, looked like a spider falling out of a tree. And the aerialing was going. It was just, and I did that my whole career. And I could hear people chuckling and, a bit of mirth and derision behind the ropes. But, got to do what you got to do. I did it my way. and off I went. Played golf, loved it.
Yeah. And obviously done a bit of coaching, done some sort of tour level coaching, short game coaching. Are there any kind of, I think in terms of gauging improvement with short game, the question was about, have you got into overall philosophy on general short game improvement, how you measure that improvement?
Measuring improvement is tough. I would have a marker. If I was chipping, I wanted, if I had 50 balls, I wanted to get 35 or 40, within a club length of the hole. Same with bunker play. How many could I get within the steel? That was always my goal. And if I had 40 bunker shots, I'd want to get 30 inside the steel.
Yeah.
And hold a couple maybe. But I think when it comes to improvement when you're coaching, man, I don't know. I'm not a professional coach, but the only way I can gauge is how the player feels. Does he think he's got better? Because sometimes you can see a player get better and he doesn't think he has, and golf pros. You can see by the results that the guy's getting better. But a guy has to believe he's better before he gets better. And that's the first thing you got to address is, try and get the guy on side mentally and get him to understand that you actually have a fair idea of what you talk about. Sometimes you get guys who are out on tour who you can't actually believe how absolutely clueless they can be with certain shots. It's like it's never entered their head to experiment. They've had a coach from very young. Their coach has told them to do this, and then they've carried on doing that all their life. And you make suggestions, and they go, "Oh, I never thought about that." So maybe guys are overcoached. We used to just self-learn, self-teach with all our buddies, practice competitions, and I think like Sevi, that's how you develop feel. I think feel's been pushed to the side a little.
Because it actually ties into again, one of the other questions is what will be a piece of advice to aspiring golfers. And actually, that's actually what you said there about feel being taught out of it. I think, or being bred out of it. I think there's obviously we use all the numbers here from a work point of view, but actually going and just trying things out, experimenting. Would that be something you would say for someone who's sort of learning golf and wanting to improve a lot? Actually, go and just try stuff.
Look, I think it depends what age you take the game up at. For youngsters, I would say, if you're a parent, take them to the chipping green and challenge them, to hit these funny little shots and bump it along the ground and learn a variety of shots rather than A, B, C, D. You take it back and, learn one method. There are 50 different things you can do when you chip. And unless you learn that young, it's very hard to teach people. I think, as people get a little older, you want a basic method that they can use. And, unless somebody's got flat-out chipping hips, which is another story, because that's entirely in here, I firmly believe there's nobody you can't teach to be a decent chipper and bunker player. I firmly believe that.
I'll tell you, it's getting to the end of our hour. We've got
you can come back for another hour if you like. I'm happy.
Well, we can if what we'll do, we'll log back in, we'll chew the card and a couple of other bits, probably I would say 10-15 minutes or so.
Absolutely.
And so for everyone who's on, log back in and fire as many questions as you want in. We'll read them out and we'll get the man himself to answer them. And we'll see you back online in about a minute.
And if you don't see me again, it's because I'm an idiot with this thing, all right?
Okay, fair enough.
Bye.
So back online, we'll see if we can find Tony again. So to anyone who's logging back in, obviously Tony's online. Any questions you got, anything at all about whether it's career, commentary, short game, just fire the questions in. We'll get them over to Tony. We'll see what answers we can get for you. So we've had sort of a good chat about some general things in particular, a bit about his career, but we'll go probably more onto the playing side of it, a bit more on the technique side of it. So whatever anybody wants to ask. So we'll see if we can find him. Logged on very quickly last time around, so I'm sure we'll find him very shortly. I believe his wife's online. So, there we go. Very impressive, sir.
Welcome to the 20th century. I haven't quite got to the 21st yet, but...
So actually got one question coming into who David logged in a little bit later on. So have we covered your equipment? I think we covered a little bit about the wedges, but Jimmy, I mean, you were with Ping for a good amount of your career.
Yeah.
And was there anything, say, from a general equipment standpoint, that you had as a very particular sort of characteristic of your bag?
Not really. I think the only strange thing about my equipment was I always had my wedges 9-iron length. From a very young age, I can't even remember why I used to do it, but I used to get to 9-iron and then all my clubs were that same length. I think I used to grip my sand wedge down an awful lot, and I think it just made the head a little heavier for me, so I could still feel the head with the wedge shots. But other than that, pretty standard length, standard lofts and lies. The lofts and lies we had in those days very different to what's standard now. But otherwise, no, basically bog standard. 4 degrees flatter. I nearly forgot that, Simon. 4 degrees flatter, which is a result of having extremely short legs and extremely long arms. I mean, if I had to do a handstand, I'd probably be taller. For some strange reason, I've just got...
So as David said, were you an inspiration for DeChambeau with your sort of single-length short arms?
No, I don't think so. No, I mean, I think I'm bonkers, but I think he's got me in that department.
So actually, one question from Lauren. I'll just make sure I get the Lauren Swadling 90 was, what was your best win and why?
I know that girl. That's my daughter.
So you say family member,
my kid's
any
doing
chance?
this to me.
Well, that's actually that's a lot more pleasant than what your son did to you.
Yeah, I know. And thank you, Lauren. My biggest win was obviously the PGA at Wentworth. You know what went with it. My very first win was the SA Open. Being a Southern African was huge, but my best win was, as you know, I was diagnosed with MS in 2013. Told I'd never play again. Got very lucky on an amazing drug trial, which basically put it into remission within a year. And then I went straight onto the Seniors Tour, the European Seniors Tour, and winning the Jersey Senior Open, the Jersey Classic. That was probably, personally, that was my greatest win, because I didn't know if I'd ever play again, let alone win. And when once I got over the drug trial, my coordination had completely changed, and it was sort of like trying to learn to play again. So from personal satisfaction, I'd say that was probably my greatest moment.
And actually, with that side of things, and so almost having to relearn elements of the game, did you really believe you could win, or clearly believe you could be competitive? Otherwise, you wouldn't have been out there. But
that's a great point. When I came out on tour as a youngster, I believed I could win. And then you've got to actually win to know you can win. But after the MS thing,
a tough one,
I don't actually know if I believed. I wanted to win desperately. I wanted that feeling again of holding a trophy. But I think the thought of being told that I would never play golf again was so...
Connection's just gone a little bit. There you go. Yep. So we got to the point you said the just playing golf again was, and this sort of cut out a little bit.
Yeah, but then I had to go and actually prove it to myself, which was the toughest thing, I think. You think, am I going to ever play golf again? Then you get to play golf again. Can I play properly again? Ooh, can I compete again? So it was like the cherry on the cake. It was pretty special.
Because you said the coordination and that changed, but I think I remember you saying in the past that just being affected by weather conditions, humidity, I think you said in particular in the past, was a big effect.
Yeah, that's still one of the lingering after effects. I mean, everybody with MS gets affected differently. It's basically your immune system trying to cure things in your body that aren't wrong. So it goes around overhealing everything, and everybody gets attacked in different ways. Mine were coordination and memory. My memory just basically evaporated. And the coordination thing was lovely. These two clowns that have sent questions in here today. When I was in the throes of MS, I mean, I couldn't get a cup of tea to my mouth or a knife and fork. And we were sitting here having a lovely Sunday roaster one day. And I jabbed a potato, and in she goes, and straight into my left eye. So now I'm sitting with this roast potato stuck in my eye. Do you think I got sympathy?
I was going to say, I bet you got no sympathy at all. No.
They absolutely hosed themselves. You see, that's my crew. They did apologise afterwards, but I would go to open a door handle. And I'd miss the door handle, and then the memory thing. I got to the point where I was talking to somebody on the phone here the one day in my office, and wanted to mention Dale's name, my boy. I couldn't remember my son's name. And when the call was finished, Karen wasn't here. I went up to his bedroom and had a look on the name tags in his sweater. I mean, it was horrendous. It really was. So,
and with
got
that,
so lucky.
Was that sort of something that you knew would be part of the condition, or was that something that actually, because that would be really pretty darn scary. I mean, I've got my father's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and so that's something that he's got coming. And is aware that things are changing in that respect, but he also knows it's part of the condition. Was that something you knew was part of that, or because if not, that would be pretty scary?
No, I mean, like most people, I knew nothing about multiple sclerosis. People standing on street corners collecting money for a charity, that's all I knew. And it's the sort of thing you don't ever anticipate happening to you. You think you're immune to all of these weird and wonderful things. And then when it was diagnosed, it started off basically with chronic tingling in my left hand. And it was like having an electric shock all the way up my arm. Then it went to my face, blah, blah, blah. And then it progressed. After I'd been told I had MS, I sort of did research and I realized that it could happen in different ways. Some people it's eyesight, some people it's use of leg. Everybody's different. But, I didn't really expect the coordination and memory thing. So that it was a bit of a surprise when it all kicked off, Well,
we're going to something a bit happier. What's your other than that? Obviously, you got back to winning. I was very happy. But what would you say? What was your best shot? What's your most memorable shot, if there is a particular one through the career?
Yeah, I should have tried to get it on video when I was much younger. My first win, as I said earlier, was the South African Open at Houghton Golf Club. And I was one ahead. I was one ahead playing the 16th. Hit my tee shot, short dogleg par 4 left to right with thick bushes and on the left and deep bunkers either side. And I got a bit of a flyer out of the semi-rough and it sort of came out veering a bit left and went, hit the green, jumped over the bunker and under a bush. And the flag is tight left. I mean, it's just... So I get in there and I don't know what to do. I mean, the bushes go back miles. There's nowhere where to drop it. Do I go back and drop in the rough again? And then I had this bright idea. There was an overhanging branch about waist height. I thought, well, if I could swing this really around my backside, shut the face, swing it around my body with an 8-iron, get it coming out really low, steep sandy bunker face. I thought, well, if this comes out hard enough, one pitch into the bunker face, hop out, and I might be able to get out of this unscathed. Well, I mean, it was like watching my one moment of being savvy. And eventually I thought, well, I've just got to commit. Remember, I'd never won before. SA Open in Southern Africa. Oh, my God. So I get in there, shut the face, and the flag is here, and I'm aiming 45 degrees right, club face around here, and I give it a dig with the hands, and it comes out like a bullet. I mean, 100 miles an hour into the sandy face of the bunker, pops up, lands on the fringe, and runs down to 4 feet, and I hold it for par.
Yeah.
And I mean, after that, you got to feel this is just going to be my week, and we're not to win it. So, Yeah, I would say that was probably the single best. A bit of luck involved, but probably the best shot ever played under the circumstances.
So the one I was thinking you might say was the shot in Qatar at the bunker. Was that
17.
Little plugged? Was it a little plugged?
Yeah, nicely plugged.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had it blew a gale that day. It was blowing 50 miles an hour plus, left to right on a par 3, and you couldn't start it far enough left. I'd started at 40 yards left of the green. Wind carried it and buried in the right-hand bunker, and the flag was quite tight right. Got there, and the thing was, it was like that. It was underground. And, thankfully, that's a shot that I have practiced a huge amount over the years. Got it really steep, as we talked about earlier in the show. Chopped down behind it, sort of played a little stun shot, and it just popped straight up, ran down to a foot. And, that was one of my best bunker shots ever, I'd say. Yeah, under the circumstances.
So with those, actually good to lead into something like the plug bunker shot. What's the technique?
Technique is square club face. If you haven't got too much of a lip, even a slightly closed club face, you don't want the club to be bouncing because, with half the ball below the sand, if you use any bounce or too much bounce, the sole's going to ricochet off the sand, the leading edge is going to catch the ball in the teeth, and it's going to go straight under the lip or into the houses on the far side. So in this circumstance, we talked about an open stance and an open club path. I'd say slightly squarer, but my thought was always, I would pick a spot maybe an inch behind the ball, but I wanted the club to be coming down as close to vertically as possible. So I would stand square with a square club face, and I would literally pick the club up as if I was picking it up over my right shoulder. I just pick it up over my right shoulder, and you just thud it down into the ground. No thought of a follow through. You want the club to be basically going straight down, just about straight down, and the momentum of the club head speed and the sand will blow it out. And it's not going to stop. It is going to run. It is going to run on. So allow for that. But weekend golfer, you're in a greenside bunker. You just want to get it out. So inch or so behind the ball, pick it up over your right shoulder, and just thump it down into the sand as hard as you can, and just let the sand blow it out.
There you go.
There you go.
Easy as that. Then, favourite courses that you've played through you? Any kind of standout ones that you've always enjoyed going back to most to play?
I think that's a tough question. There's so many different types of course. Bushveld courses in Africa, Leopard Creek, just passionately love it. Parkland courses, Sunningdale Old, where they've been so wonderful to me over the years. They've let me do all my practice up there since '84 and given me the run of the place. I'd say Parkland courses, that would be Sunningdale. They're both great courses, new and old. Old was my favourite. Links courses, I don't think St Andrews is the best links course in the world. But if you said to me you can play one links course again ever, it has to be St Andrews. You've been up there. The atmosphere, the home of golf, there's something special about it. The first time you play it, I don't know about you, but I hated it. I thought it was the worst bad joke I'd ever come across in my life. And I was playing with John Bland, who had raved about St Andrews for years. I said, were you drunk every time you played this course? So this is just horrendous. I've never seen such an ugly field with a few bomb blasts in it. And he just looked at me and spoke. He says, "You'll learn, my boy." And as I got to play it more and more, I started to appreciate the subtleties and fell in love with it. And St Andrews, look, there's so many great links courses in the UK. I love Birkdale, but those Royal Melbourne would be hard to look past. I love Royal Durban Country Club down in South Africa. I always find it a really hard question. What's your best one course? If you said to me, what's the one course you could play forever, for the rest of your life, one course, Sunningdale Old. Yeah. See you on the first tee, Simon. We'll ever know.
It was going to be high on a lot of people's lists, that one. Yeah, very high on a lot of people's lists. For me with my first time at St Andrews, first 5 or 6 holes, I was just sort of floating around and just not really focused on playing, and I didn't play very well. But I just kind of, I think once I then gave myself a slap around the face and focused on playing. But Yeah, I think, as you say, the more you play it, the more you see the subtlety of it. You get to see the pins in different places,
Yeah.
wind in different directions, and all of a sudden you can play it 5 times and play 5 different golf courses.
Absolutely. I mean, the wind has only got to change tack by 10 degrees at St Andrews. Different golf course. It's magnificent, isn't it?
The only
It
thing
really
I think that is a shame is that the road hole bunker is not as severe as it used to be. It's that's
really
changed
good point.
massively over
Really
the
good
years.
point. First time I played at St Andrews, I could not see a look. If you say that's because you're only 2'6", I'm going to come and have you. But honestly, I would stand in the bunker, and I wasn't close to seeing over the lip of the bunker. The lip was way above my head, and I haven't grown. Definitely haven't grown. And if you were up against the face of that bunker, it was sheer. It was.
Yeah.
You were just, we know Nakajima made a 13, and I think Mark Moulin took something big number there as
Duval
well.
took a lot in there as well, I think, one year.
I think he did. I mean, there were situations in that bunker, if you attempted to go forwards, you were gone, but you couldn't go backwards either, because the face was so steep you couldn't get a backswing. Oh, it was a nightmare. And the back of the bunker used to slope down towards the green. Excuse me, it's a heck of a lot easier now.
Though I think I saw something, I think it was very recently, where it was a photo of it. I think it is a lot less. I think they've even reduced it further still.
And no,
And
it's not daunting. I don't think it's daunting at all anymore.
yeah, I think it almost, it's a very hard golf hole at the best of times anyway, but it's such a feature of it that I think it risks being dumbed down.
Yeah,
I think is the only phrase you can use for it. I mean, you've still got the Hell bunker, which is dastardly, massively deep. Strath bunker on 11, which are now much tougher than the road hole bunker. And
absolutely, the road hole bunker was, look, it's a great hole anyway, but it was the one place that you absolutely could not go. Now if it goes in the bunker, you think, oh, it's going to be a hard shot, but the green's about 12 yards wide, but it's doable now. It is doable. Even with a tight left bunker pin position, if you get lucky, you can have a shot to the flag. You couldn't in the old days. Off a down slope, lip up there, out of bounds, and then I'll still wake up sweating at night thinking about it.
So in tournament rounds, any shots you've seen I mean, Sevi aside, we've already covered Sevi. Who had the best game in terms of bits of the game? So we took kind of driving, iron play, short game. We're probably going to say Sevi, I would imagine. But who were the ones that you looked up to most when you were playing? Who were the ones you said, right, that's the best I've seen in that part of the bag?
I only played once with Tiger. Played with him in the World Cup in Argentina, and he, like Sevi, was just a different league. We all have people that we dream about emulating. I mean, none of us even dreamt about being as good as Tiger, because you just couldn't be. It was phenomenal. It was mind-bending how good he was. But we all know that. I would say, other than putting, Nick Price. Nick was a very hot and cold putter, and he didn't have the hot sections often enough. But striking. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. I mean, the man, he and Tom Watson were the two best I ever saw. Yeah. Tiger was long and he was magnificent, but for purity of strike, those two, and Nick was a terrific chipper, excellent bunker player, great wedge player, did everything right, just overall in his career didn't putt well enough.
Yeah, because that why, as you say, he's always someone who a lot of players over the years have talked about ball striking. Would it be that sort of streakiness on the greens that meant that I got a couple of majors is still pretty good? Or was it 2 US PGAs and an Open? I think it was 2 US PGAs
and an Open. Yeah, absolutely.
So
and he always said that he didn't win more Opens because he was never a good enough long putter. When you're in the majors, and particularly at the Open when the wind's blowing, you can absolutely stripe it all day. And never get inside 40 feet. You've got to be a good long putter. And Nick said he was just never a good enough long putter, didn't make enough long putts, and probably three putted a little too often. And I would agree with that. If you're not a great long putter, you're struggling out there.
So I think that's one thing that strikes me, particularly when you watch Augusta, is that the bit that yes, the courses are all tough, but it's the pace of the greens and the judgment of pace that I think that's one of the things that really stands out to me about the top players now, is that how good at pace control they are.
On ridiculously fast greens. You know, when I played, you know, if a greens got to 12, they were considered outrageous. You know, you'd all have, you know, sweaty palms when you're on the first tee in the morning. And I do marvel at times when they get on these greens that are 13, 14, 14 and a half and slopey, and they keep rolling it up this close. And I think, my God, I wasn't a great long putter either, to be honest. And I look at this and I think, I was never even close to be able to doing that on really long putts, you know, on ultra fast greens. Augusta drove me nuts. It was just bizarre. And, you know, in those days they clicked it up so much from Wednesday night to Thursday morning. It was a different golf course. Your practice rounds were a waste of time. And you get out there and, you know, they turn the greens into concrete overnight. It was bizarre.
Because that's the thing they do now. They've got the sub-air system. They can literally sort of suck all the moisture out of the green. But back then, was it the way they rolled the greens? Would they not cut them as tight in practice rounds and then shave them right down? Was it famously bikini wax them, was what Gary McCord called them?
Gary McCord. No, they were just sneaky bastards, to be honest. I remember I played a couple of practice rounds, and on the Wednesday morning, I hit a 6-iron into the first hole, you know, and it would bounce sort of 8 feet in the air and run 8 or 10 yards. Okay, get up on the first hole of the tournament, same time of the day, nice drive, 6-iron. I could hear it from where I was, no wind. I could hear it from 6-iron distance. It was like it had landed on a wooden table. Boing! And this thing bounced 15 feet in the air and just launched itself over the back of the green. I said, a sprinkler? Not at all. And I was talking to Roger Davis about this at lunch that same day. He said, I thought you knew. I said, you know what? He said, I was down here a few years ago practice putting late in the evening. He said, and I saw them putting top dressing down on the 9th green on Wednesday evening. I said, what? He said they had this huge thing that sprayed this special silica sand over the whole green. And they leave it there for a half an hour, and it sucks all the moisture out for a half an inch to an inch, just sucks the moisture out. And then they come out with these huge vacuum cleaners and vacuum the whole lot up, every grain, so you don't. Oh, happy days. And you could not believe the difference. It was just, I mean, you couldn't make a pitch mark on the greens. Literally couldn't make a pitch mark. And that was overnight. They did that to all 18 greens.
Incredible. Yeah.
Miserable sets.
Yeah. And were you of the superstition of not playing the par 3 tournament for fear of winning it, or?
No, not at all. No, just you know, it was something that was part of the tournament. You had to do it. And I had Steve Haskins, one of my great buddies, in the bag caddying for me. I know it was different. I've got to say, the Masters was probably, this is sacrilegious, I know, probably the greatest anticlimax of my career. I only played in one in 93, but the course was tricked up so badly I didn't, I mean, maybe I should have found out more about it. But I remember driving down Magnolia Lane, and it's just this dead straight driveway with a couple of trees down. I said, well, we're coming in the back door. No, this is Magnolia Lane. Oh, really? So you want to try coming to Wentworth? Come down the Wentworth driveway when the BMW used to be on there. You see a proper drive with rhododendrons and azaleas. And I'm a mad keen gardener, as you know, and it was the only year that none of the azaleas or rhododendrons came out. None. I got to Amen Corner. I've got to see this tree. Solid green. Yeah. And look, they made an effort. They'd had a poor winter. They had put hot air blowers every night, day and night, trying to bring out the flowers. It just didn't happen. And, little things. I was on the range with Bob Torrance, Sam's dad, who was my coach, and he was videoing me. And one of the Pinkertons, the security guys, came over and said, sorry, this is Augusta. You can't use a video camera. Sorry, I'm a player. This is not pro-am day, is it? I said, I'm a player. It's my coach. Sorry, no. So off I go and I have to the office. I said, excuse me. I'm on the range. I'm a competitor. They said, yes, Mr. Johnstone, I know who you are. I said, well, I'm on the range with my coach, Bob Torrance, and he's videoing me. And I've been told that, he can't do that. I said, that's right. This is Augusta. And honestly, from that moment on, I didn't really want to be there. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had a bunch of friends from here and from South Africa that had come over especially to watch, I think I probably would have just packed my bags and given them the royal salute as I left the driveway. It just got so much up my nose. You know, no, this is Augusta. You can't use a video on the range. What the hell are you talking about? Just, things have changed. I think they've got a lot better now. But in those days, didn't really enjoy it.
And major championship course of setup, how differently did you have to approach the majors from a strategy point of view? I mean, in terms of course setup, how much more severe was the setup in a major to your sort of, I won't say average, but even the bigger tournaments on tour those days?
A lot. You know, they would get the greens much harder, the greens much firmer. US Open, you know, they were renowned for putting this ridiculous rough in that, you know, you couldn't get it out with a gel ignite. Even the Open Championship, you know, up until Carnoustie when Paul Laurie won.
Yeah, 99.
99. I mean, it was an absolute disaster. And thankfully, the RNA learned from that, and they've really got clever with their setup of Open Championship courses now. It's not extreme. It's how golf should be played. Yes, they have a little bit of rough, but they do a fabulous job. US Open, they still give you the stuff up to your calves, and it is much harder. You know, the US Open, they always take a par 72 course and make it a 71 or 70. Change 2 par 5s to par 4s. Now, par 5 greens are that big, you know, the old designs. That's how they were meant to be. Now you've got, you know, 510-yard par 4 to a green that big. That's absolute rubbish. But I think the hardest thing was going to a major championship and treating it as any other tournament. You know, a lot of the guys from Europe in our days didn't get to play in the majors. They didn't have that many exemptions in America. So we had one major a year, and it was very hard not to get overcome and just try too hard. You know, you'd be on the range till dark, hitting balls. Do I want to play well? I'm not playing well. And most of us just overdid it. Where the smart guys like Jack Nicklaus, etc., you know, they had 4 majors a year to play, and then they arrived here. Well, I'm just going to do what I normally do. I'll just go out there and win this damn thing. So, yeah, it was always a different feeling in majors, but it was a wonderful feeling too. It was always wonderful.
And so one of the things a lot of the tour players talk about is scoreboard watching. When a player says, I don't look at scoreboards when it's the last 9 holes on a Sunday coming, is that complete codswallop? Or, I mean, obviously you look at someone like Parnevik, who didn't scoreboard watch, went for birdie at Turnberry, made bogey, lost. You know, is it, if the player doesn't want to, it's something the caddy will always, I'm assuming the caddy will always monitor it so they can tell their boss to push or to rein it back, but...
No, you know, there'll be times that you'll want to know where you're lying in the tournament. You know, it's like trying to run the hurdles with a blindfold on. How the hell do you know where you stand? You know, and if you can't bear watching a scoreboard because it's going to do you too much harm mentally, well then you're a chocolate fireman. You're in the wrong line of work. You know, you just don't be there. Yeah. You know, it's what the part of the thrill is you there. This is what you've practiced for your whole life. You're there to do battle. You want to fight. You want to, you know, it's like being in the ring. Jeez, I can't understand these guys that say, "Oh, I don't want to see leaderboards." Man up, man up. I've made a lot of friends there.
Say whatever you think. Actually, probably kind of one particularly for golfers over here where we don't really get things like grain much. Whereas in South Africa, and the first time I ever encountered grain, I was down in South Africa on a school hockey tour, and as a 16-year-old, having only played over here, they were doing rugby and hockey, and I hurt my lower back, so I wasn't playing rugby. And the hockey master said, "Do you fancy going for a game of golf?" Whilst they trained for rugby, which made us really popular. But it was the first time I'd ever encountered A, the thicker leaf grasses, and B, grain. So I hit a chip into, landed on the fringe, and the thing's stuck. Or putting and it goes up the hill, and I hadn't got the faintest idea what was going on. But how do you read grain? How do you work it out? How do you incorporate it into your kind of green reading and shot selection?
I can summarize this quite quickly, because we used to have to tell all the English guys and the Europeans that came out to South Africa, I mean, it would bend their minds. You know, you could see the slope is distinctly left to right, and they'd hit it a foot left, and the ball would go a foot up the hill. And it would play with their minds. And, I mean, there's a couple of tricks. First of all, the colour of the green. If you look down grain, so always look from both sides of the hole. Good idea is to actually do a full circuit. But if you're looking down grain, the grain is lighter green and shinier. You go to the other side of the hole and look into it, it's dark. Dark is into the grain. And particularly if the holes have been down there or later in the day, look at the wear on the edge of the hole. If the grain is left to right, there will be wear on the edge of the down grain side of the hole. And also when they cut the holes and pull the hole cutter out the ground, it tends to break down on the down grain side of the edge of the hole. So it might be a little barer. And you could actually have a look, you know, if you get on grainy greens, Bermuda generally, you can actually see the stalks of the grass, which way they're growing. You know, they're just tricks that you learn on grain, and it doesn't take long if you're prepared to have a look and learn.
Yeah, it's getting your head around it, and that's. So I'm going to. I think we've done sort of 90 minutes now, which is great. Really, really grateful for your time, and as always, it's great fun having you on board. But one last question. I think that it was Mark, I think, who was here, said, how would you sum up your career? How would you sum up you as a player? I think that was if you had one word to sum yourself up as a player, what would it be?
Begins with an A and ends with an E. That's just my behaviour. Now, I would say one word. I would just say determined. I'd say determined. You know, I think I was sort of medium talent, maybe a little. Maybe I don't give myself enough credit, but I think determined, which led me to be a very hard worker. But I think that one word would cover me: determination. Yeah. Perfect.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been great having you on. It's great to see you looking well and staying relatively sane through this period.
Don't say that. Every time somebody says you're looking well, what they really mean is you're looking fat. I know. and listen, by the way, thank you to you guys for all you did for me over the years, helping with my equipment. You guys were, as I said earlier, when I was away from tour, there were only two people that I trusted with my equipment, you and James.
That's very kind.
Thank you so much.
And always a joy to have in, because you could guarantee that there was some filthy story from the tour that you would come out with, which would just keep us entertained for hours on end. I think was it one of the times, I think there was a surreal time where you walked into the studio. It was when we were back in Thorpe, and you walked in through the fitting area into the workshop, and there was the family dog was a pug called Colin. And Sam Torrance was on the floor on all fours playing with the Colin the pug. And I think you walked in and wondered what parallel universe you'd walked into. But no, we've always had a tremendous amount of fun. And so this has been no different. So it's been great fun. Thank you very much indeed.
Lovely. My pleasure. Thanks.
And if you need to replicate your bush hacking, grow a bit of elephant grass in the garden and get next door's tortoise to come underneath the fence. Job's a good one.
I'll follow your advice as ever.
Tony, great to see you.
Thanks a lot.
Catch up soon. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.